All right, working on a small painting, 2.5 by 3.5, size of a baseball card, basically. And I'm bringing up chat so I can hand out wrenches here. So if you're in chat, you say hello. You will be handed a new one here at the end of it. And this allows me to monitor the chat while I work. The image I generated to work from is actually from AI, which a lot of people are opposed to. Like, am I wrong for using AI? Just about there. Okay, there we go. Chat is open. So I can see your comments now. And the image I rendered is on the screen. I can't share at the moment. I started working on one. I realized it's going to take a minute to dry before I can complete it, so I might as well do a second one, which is my custom anyway. I tend to double up in case one of them fails or there's one that does well. Well, then I can sell two of them. What's up, King Ravana? Voorhees slew. Right. Well, it's actually today, the 13th, is his birthday, I believe. I think he was born in 1946. I got to check the lore. And I'm just painting him next to the Space Needle to be somewhat ironic. We all know the significance of it. I've noticed a lot of right-winger type, or more like Laura Loomer in particular, and many others. They're saying, like Charlie Kirk, he's like, put your head on a swivel. Like, I don't know, I can't imagine that guy fighting his way out of a paper bag, but the idea is that be on alert, because the Muslim terrorists are going to turn on their sleeper cell. So it's the sleeper cell thing again. Sleeper cell. I made this correlation between incels and suicide bombers, and incels and sleeper cells. Just the terminology that's been somewhat rehashed. Just kind of correlating QAnon with Quran when it comes to this idea of the white Al-Qaeda, the base, which is in play right now. Apparently, they're doing paramilitary training. In other news, the space station is leaking. So they're delaying the movies. I think Peg Whitson, the one who was orbiting for 666 days, she was supposed to go up, but they delayed it. I'm looking forward to Tom Cruise going into space. I have some theories about where that's going. Now, when it comes to dates, the Space Needle's date of becoming a national historic monument, rather, it became a historical monument. It was designated such on April 19th, which is, of course, Oklahoma City bombing and Waco. These are like foundational holidays for like a religious cult, basically. There's a story attached to it. I haven't seen Sum of All Fears, but I was reading about it. This Tom Clancy that's said to have foreshadowed elements of 9/11, and how the movie was altered, and they replaced the white nationalist they replaced the Arab terrorist with white nationalist terrorists to be politically correct, which is kind of a fascinating idea here. It's like they've been manufacturing the domestic version of it. And I'm not particularly into horror films, although I guess I do watch a lot of them. I mean, The News is a horror film, basically, a horror comedy. But I have this tradition of painting Jason Voorhees every Friday the 13th. And I throw it up on eBay. And this year is no different. So these two paintings of Jason at the Space Needle will be posted likely on Ko-Fi, if not eBay. This is the only Friday 13th this year. Interesting. I happen to, I've analyzed a lot of these channels that use dates to make predictions, and there's various ways of arriving at things. There are those who see it after the fact or right close to the date, and they group a lot of, quote, hits with the numbers and the letters adding up. And they do compile quite a bit of what I would consider to be manufactured significances, ignoring the misses, focusing on the hits. A classic Texas sharpshooter. It's easy to do when you're using gematria calculators. But I noticed that what they don't really do is they don't analyze the authenticity of the events themselves. In fact, they seem to indicate, for the most part, this particular genre of conspiracy theorizing, that they're predicting real events. And that's certainly not my position here. But we're looking at the zeitgeist as it's represented to the masses through all the propaganda vectors, as though we're looking at a singular media ecosystem. And that is something you can demonstrate. And there are many times the media becomes self-aware of it, and they report on all of the eerie coincidences. But these are not just coincidences. I think we have arrived at a pretty compelling why behind all of it. And what I decided to do is, as I'm working towards publishing the 3rd edition of the Auto Hoaxer 101 handbook, I'm just going to publish segments of it. Like the meta script in particular is the next one. What my real contention here is, and why no mainstream alternative channel will touch it. It's radioactive. This is beyond just the usual toxic misinformation, because what we're talking about exposes the rigged game. Nice blue sky. So yesterday I was on the crest, like I think 11,000 feet up or something. I was on a hike. I saw deer and stuff. It was all super peaceful. And then I hear this helicopter, and I'm wondering, what the hell are they doing? The helicopter is like, I was having a moment of silence. You stand out in the woods and you just listen. And anyway, I kept hearing this helicopter, but I just found out it's because somebody found a dead body, and they were actually, it's the sheriff's helicopter. I might have stumbled on it, but I was aware that I was disrupting the deer. So when I saw the deer, I just did a 180 and I went back the way I came. I mean, I've been scolded by squirrels. Like, they get mad. They legit get angry. And there's this really nice meadow up there that I wanted to paint, but they put fencing up around it because it's sort of a sanctuary for animals and you can't really go in anymore. I don't have a problem with that. What's up, Jake Saltzman? The first unwrenched person in the room. Here is your wrench. Painting Jason for Friday the 13th. 2 of them. If I had more surfaces or a bigger canvas, I'd be using it, but I've used up all my canvases. But the nice thing about these is if you order them, they arrive in baseball card sleeves. You know what? I might just also paint the date on his chest, on his t-shirt. And I could make it look like it's in blood, but I have to do the underpainting with white lettering. I'll have to open his shirt up a little bit, no problem. What's up, Roxy? You have a missus. That's a complicated question. Okay, 6/13/25 on his t-shirts. He's a bit more likable than Freddy. He doesn't say anything. I mean, Freddy's, classic black humor, very dark, morbid, but definitely a terrible backstory. Definitely an evil villain. All right, there we go. 6/13/25. But I work with one element or one color at a time, and I'll go back and forth between the two. So I'd like to get these both done within half an hour. So we still have 20 more minutes. I did a painting of a stone cabin that was at the crest. I got about 90% of it done there. I was assailed by these little flies. These little bugs were just getting into the paint. Like the Great Wall of China or whatever, or Hoover Dam. The people who die fall into the cement, just become part of it. And I had a number of these little things that were just basically now part of the painting. But I did remove them, even though they were embedded in the paint. I saved a couple of their lives, I'm sure of it. One of them got away with paint on its back, and I hate to be cruel to insects, but they see the colors and they just dive. I found that watercolors too, they'll attract the bees. And I saw this beetle, very, very long-horned beetle with this this gold glittery backside. And I took a picture of it, and I asked Perplexity AI what it was, and it said it was an Asian longhorn beetle, common around certain pine trees. All right, so if you look at I got a Bing image I'm working off of, and so on that one it has a bit of a blood on its machete, and then he has these triangles on the mask. If I was going to the protests, I wouldn't wear a COVID mask. I'd wear a Jason mask. Oh, by the way, tomorrow's a big day. Tomorrow is going to be the No Kings protest. Supposedly 1,800 locations. And then, of course, Trump's birthday, D.C., tanks on the street. Some are suggesting there might be a Tiananmen Square situation, which is preposterous. But I could see, I mean, this is the same side of the political aisle that lies down in the streets to save Mother Gaia. Like, they would lay down in front of a tank. That's right, Jason's mom was the real killer. She made him. I stopped following it after Jason Goes to Space. I prefer psychological horror to just pure slash and Like, there's been a number of movies that some people have recommended to me. Like, there's this one about this clown, and he just kills people in cruel ways. But killer clowns that don't talk, the silent killer. It's they're just not all that compelling. Like, I like Black Mirror, like relatable horror. But yeah, Saturday will be fun. I don't know what the big agenda is, but again, I look at the alt media as propaganda vectors who offer a bit of predictions. They kind of foreshadow what's to come with some limited inside knowledge, and there's a uniformity in what they're saying right now, which is head on a swivel. This weekend, expect terror attacks. Like, fear mongering, sure, but it sounds like informed fear mongering because they're positioning themselves to be subject matter experts. Like, see, we told you so. But it's the uniformity, and it's the usual suspects. Loomer has also claimed, and she showed it on Twitter, that she's been given another death threat. And she's been getting death threats ever since The Madness came out, which I've talked about. Her corresponding character, Lauren Jennings, dies. And I'm wondering if she's gonna, what's the trendy word again? Get unalived? Because we have to use euphemisms now, I guess. It's like, why do we have to? Why can't we just say death, killed, murdered, butchered? I mean, who cares? At this point, I'm not even convinced that death is real, like, as far as the way it's described. So I don't know what it is enough to really be offended by the word we use to describe it. What's up, Mech says? Robots are unalive. Well, yeah, they are. But what's interesting here is, like, University of Zurich did that study, and they showed that the robots are like 6 times more persuasive than people in changing people's political opinions. And I think one of the things that we have to contend with is the illusion of consensus. They will manufacture a consensus on anything because they can outnumber real people to bots. I was also thinking about this notion of influencing people by sending targeted bots to influence the opinions of the people in their vicinity. So imagine you're walking down a certain road, speculating, thinking, and next thing you know, your roommate is essentially doing damage control on behalf of Big Brother because now they've come across some opinions that they wouldn't have arrived at if they had not been targeted as an indirect way of getting into your head. That's how I would approach it. All right, so I may have to let these dry. We'll be live later on tonight. I have these PSYOP trading cards. I've been unpacking them. I'm sorting them out. There's 30 orders. Once I have all 30 in the mailbox, I'll put the remaining 20 up for sale and order the next 20. I'll order 12 new ones. So there'll be the next order will be 24. But the PSYOP trading cards have a great deal of potential for a lot of reasons. Everything that I anticipated doing with the tabloid can really be done also with the cards. And it's much more efficient. Like, economically, it's more feasible. So I'm going to do the cards indefinitely. I'm going to roll sales into ordering more. The tabloid is still going to happen, and AI is making it possible. That's why I'm kind of not defensive of AI, but I kind of stand up for it when people say it's the devil, because it's making a lot of things possible for this channel that would not be if I had to rely on labor, human labor. All right, so we'll be back later to talk about nukes and, just give me an idea. I was thinking about Tulsi Gabbard and her movie counterpart. I mean, that's what really gets me, is that we're looking at a situation unfolding on the world stage that was foreshadowed by a movie that contains repetitive elements as these other movies, but that the villainess has a very distinctive hairstyle with a skunk stripe through it that perfectly matches Tulsi Gabbard, who enters the world stage 2 days ago to tell us that we're about to get nuked. Like in pretty uncertain. I mean, her terms are not even that vague. She's like, nuclear annihilation. We've never been closer. And I'm like, okay, this is too coordinated. This is way too coordinated. You know what, Diana Southard? I'm glad you brought that up. I think I might actually paint the Red Power Ranger. People wouldn't believe it if they didn't have the full context. But one of the main operatives behind the Q drops on 8chan is a New Zealand actor who did some work as the Red Power Ranger. And the Red Power Ranger role is itself interesting because so many people who've worn that costume have wound up dead, castrated, imprisoned, or prison, insane asylums. I mean, all of them have come to really bad ends. And the last Red Power Ranger, this is like Final Destination stuff. This last Power Ranger, who has not yet been hit by the curse, even though he body doubled for a guy that did die after nearly killing his family, he is a White House press corps person who is a top Q influencer. And I was just wondering, how is the curse going to manifest for this guy? I have a few ideas because he is, of course, a hacker who was at one point, and it just got dropped, but he was indirectly, his organization was being sued by Hunter Biden. And he did have to spend $350K on legal fees. I don't know if that constitutes the Red Ranger curse, but it doesn't bode well. I mean, it seems like it's looking for him. Yeah, a lot of them had tragic stories, not just the Red Ranger, that's for sure. But there's certainly a storyline with Red Rangers, and I was following it. And then it's like, after COVID, this Red Ranger got arrested and is in prison for COVID loan fraud. Millions of dollars of grift. Just, he got caught. Taking money from the victims of the thing, that's terrible. He wasn't satisfied with two little $1,200 stimmy checks. I was fine with those. It got me to Corona Field out in Roswell. I had to see for myself. And then we find out, and the Pentagon admits, I mean, we can't really understate the significance of the Pentagon admitting that they made up all the UFO bullshit about Area 51. So you're telling me that the Pentagon wrote the X-Files? That the most popular science fiction is provably government propaganda? That it's what they want you to believe? And I've been saying this all along, but it's nice that they're admitting it, I guess. What's my take on the LA riots? You know, it's interesting how the left is like, even Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, gets on the screen to say, it's not that bad. So the lefties are saying nothing's happening. People on the right are saying it's a third world country. But from what I gather, they're probably more concentrated than you would think, and therefore more fakeable. I mean, real people get involved, but there are real provocateurs. There are actual people who are, all about the issues. But if there's anything, like let's say there's a mass shooting event, or a van runs over a bunch of people, or a space station lands on protesters. Yeah, those events, you can presume them to be fake because they have closed movie sets at will. They have the police there. And what is the common denominator in every single PSYOP, terror attack, school shooting attack, Every single PSYOP has what in common with it? Complicity with the law enforcement. This goes for all of them, including, EMTs. The DHS is the top of this pyramid, but it involves all these agencies and their cooperation. And yeah, obviously the police departments are part of these psychological operations. Drills. Yeah, that's the thing too. I did notice a lot of the babies being brought to the riots, and so the babies are on camera after getting maced by the big bad ICE agents, and I'm like, okay, that's just a propaganda thing. It's probably a rubber baby, probably not even real. Anyway, they ought to arrest the mother for taking the kid and putting them in front of the cops. Like a human shield? That's a human shield. But the simulation training dolls, some of them talk. I mean, they're so realistic that if I was an Antifa, I would bring a bunch of these with me, and I would use them as human shields because they look so realistic. And if the cop batons your rubber baby, they look really bad. They'd be burning babies everywhere. Like, look what the LAPD did. People love their atrocity propaganda. I noticed a few Walmarts got looted, other stores got looted, which they let happen. Nothing changes, they just loot all at once instead of... And people will excuse that behavior because it's class warfare and stuff. How long did it take to get comfortable watercolor painting? I just really took an interest in watercolor painting a couple years ago. And I started using these brushes. I don't know if I have one in reach. Yes. This changed everything for me. These brushes, which you can get in 4-packs at Walmart if they haven't looted yours. Well, I guess they don't take art supplies. Those are probably safe. You fill these up with water, and while you're painting, it allows you to, draw accurately, but you squeeze the water out as you go. And when I started working with these, I was able to get details. I was able to do some fine detail work with the watercolor and then create washes just by adding water. It kind of reminded me of, honestly, of airbrushing, which I stopped doing because it's cost intensive and noisy. But I didn't make any progress until I started using those watercolor brushes, those water-filled brushes. Right now, this is acrylic, and I work on multiples every time because I don't want to sit there waiting for something to dry. And then I have a backup in case I really screw something up. Or if I do something well, I can, pretty much know I'll sell 2 of them. What's up, Penguinati Auto Hoaxer? By the way, if anybody's waiting on a commission, there's a couple of people out there, I will be working on those very soon. Lately, I've been doing still lifes of energy drink cans and trash or whatever's just in front of me, random stuff. And those happen to be selling well for some reason. And I'm hoping that, I'm hoping that this isn't overshadowed by the AI stuff. I don't think it will be. It might even help. I don't know. Maybe people would be better or more inclined to buy real art after being immersed in so much of the AI stuff. Because one thing AI art has done is it's involved a lot of people who may not have been as deeply involved. So it might have a positive effect on, quote, real art. So I'm not a pessimist about it. I don't feel like it's a competitor. And in fact, I'm using it right now. I wanted an image of Jason Voorhees standing in front of a Space Needle. And instead of having to find images and then create a composite, which I wouldn't have a problem doing, but it takes time, I just asked Bing to do it. Till asks if I'm, yeah, you know what, clay is, I used to do a lot of sculpture using 16 gauge steel wire, like the gardening wire, to build armatures, and then I would use what's called Sculpey, this clay that you bake in the oven. But I would create, puppet clowns and zombies or human beings, basically, that, sculptures. But I would use a Sculpey clay, which is super easy to work with, but I'd use a wire frame. And then I started working with just wire and cheesecloth, which you dip in like latex house paint. So if you build an armature out of wire and you wrap it with this cheesecloth, dip it in that latex paint, it absorbs it, and it becomes essentially a sculpting medium. I did a lot of work like that as well. I've been working on cyborg penguins, mostly out of just found objects, a stuffed animal augmented with wire and some computer parts. But what I really want to try doing is 3D printed cyborg penguins that have some kind of utility, whether it be a Bluetooth speaker, or perhaps it could be some kind of desktop AI agent, an interface, more or less. All right, well, I'm going to be back live later on today. I'm going to let these dry, and I'll put them up on Ko-Fi, and I'll put them in the newsletter. They'll be dry by then, and I'll take the final photos, and if there's any final details, I'll do it at that point, but the paint's a little thick. If you want a wrench, just say hello, and I will add it now. See you later. Thanks.